So are we on our way to becoming Portland East or maybe Seattle East or San Francisco East? You've probably seen the videos coming out of those cities, sidewalks lined with tents filled with homeless people, and you've heard stories of people pooping on the street. Maybe the media haven't been doing a good job of covering it, but we apparently have our own version of that here. Bobby Harr is with Eyes on Pittsburgh, and he's been covering it. He joins us now. Bobby, thanks for coming on.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
So let's start with the video that you produced that has over 100,000 views already. What's on it?
Yeah, so I took a trip down to the south side where a lot of people were telling me about this homeless encampment. I'd already started documenting some areas around the city, but this is basically the cream of the crop when it comes to homeless encampments, filth, waste, needles, you name it. I mean, it's about as bad as it gets. And I decided to visit it, and I documented basically the whole thing. I took a tour throughout the inside of it, and I mean, it's basically indistinguishable from a landfill.
And so this is the encampment, it's called, on the south side, and it caught on fire recently. So what? Give us a little description of some more detail on what you found there, what it looks like.
Yeah, so I want to comment about the fire you mentioned. It happened to catch on fire 1 hour after I published the video, which was crazy. The second time this encampment's caught on fire since 2017. And while I was there, I saw everything from, I mean, John, you couldn't go 1 foot without stepping on a used needle, stamp bags of heroin, bike parts, a slew of rusty bikes, pieces of scrap metal. There was a fire pit, absolutely filthy porta potty, and just piles and piles and piles of trash. There was couches, recliners, furniture. It was incredible that this actually exists in Pittsburgh.
And where exactly is it on the south side, and how close to homes and businesses?
Sure, yeah. This is right over by George K. Couples Stadium. It's at South 7th Street in East Carson, right under the McCardle Viaduct. And it is pretty close to businesses. I don't remember exactly what's next to it, but you can throw a stone from about 3 or 4 businesses and hit this encampment. It's so close that some of the needles were actually on the street itself, and I could see people that were working coming to and from the camp, or walking around it, coming to and from work. And
so, has the city made any effort to clear it out and clean it up?
That's a great question. So the city had a new policy that came out recently that stated that certain camps qualify for what they call decommissioning. In other words, they're to get rid of the camp and clean it up. And this one, based on the policy that came out, it definitely qualifies under this policy for 2 reasons: to be removed. It qualifies as a fire hazard and having uncontained needles and waste. However, despite that, the city has refused to take any action on these camps and have just given excuses about the lack of housing and whatnot, despite the fact that they put this policy into effect. So my question for the city would be, why would you put a policy into place that you're not going to enforce, especially one that concerns the safety and well-being of so many people around us? I mean, the perfect example is this catching on fire for the second time shortly after this policy went into effect. This encampment's fires have caused structural damage to the McCardle roadway bridge, and still nothing.
And so what's been the response from the city and the county when you've asked what's being done about it?
Well, that's today I actually got a refusal to comment from both Mayor Ed Gainey's office and Councilman Bruce Krause, which is Pittsburgh District 3. This is his district that this encampment lies in. And both Mayor Ed Gainey's office, being Olga George, the press secretary, refused to comment on my video or the fire that occurred there recently. And the same came from Councilman Bruce Krause. Instead, Councilman Krause pushed me to, his team pushed me to reach out to the mayor's office for comment, who already refused it, refused giving me a statement. So who takes responsibility here? Who's accountable for this? Who's going to do something about it? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, a lot of people should want to know. So you described what you saw there. The thing caught on fire, and you can't get the councilman who represents that district or the mayor to comment on it, or to even not even just comment on it, and maybe even acknowledge its existence. Did they even do that?
No, they both clearly stated to me that they refused to give any statement whatsoever on it. So, if they want to treat me like I don't exist, I got a message for them. I won't quit. I won't stop. I will continue documenting things like this in the city, and I will continue putting pressure on them until something's done, because this is unacceptable, and at very least, it needs to be acknowledged. So it's a shame whenever you see people in positions of power like this decide that it's best to stay radio silent and try and ignore the problem, while tax-paying citizens like us that live in the city have to deal with the consequences.
Well, they don't pay me enough here to watch local TV news. Maybe I could get them to do that if I, pushed it. But right now, I only see local TV news by accident. It just stinks so bad that I can't get through it. And so this sounds to me, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I worked in the local TV news for a while. This sounds like a pretty good local TV news story. Have you seen anybody doing any in-depth story on this locally, and have you made them aware of it?
I've reached out to all the local news channels, WPXI, KDKA. I've reached out to them all. I actually did speak to Andy Sheehan today at KDKA, and he had mentioned that he was going to reach out to me here soon and ideally do an interview. So I hope that follows through. I know the local news has covered the fire at this encampment, but more importantly than the fire, I believe what needs to be covered is the byproduct of this fire, which is the fact that, the consequences of this. The fire alone puts the homeless encampment in the criteria that qualifies this encampment for decommissioning or removing of it entirely. So the fire itself isn't necessarily the story. The story is the fact that this encampment falls under criteria to be removed, and the city doesn't care. They're not doing anything about it. So this policy is useless.
We're talking to Bobby Harr. I don't know, is it a website, Eyes on Pittsburgh, or just your documentary company?
So it's brand new. It's just me doing it, and I'm across all social media channels at Eyes on PGH. Mm-hmm. So you can find me there, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the goal is to expand this. The goal is to continue doing this work and continue showing waste and filth and homelessness and addiction in the city. I have more content lined up that I'll be having come out soon. But I sure as heck, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to quit doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep putting pressure on the city. So if you want to see any of the new content I have or continue following, it's at Eyes on PGH. So that's where you can find it all. Mm-hmm.
And you said earlier today you were up to over 100,000 views. What are you up to now?
Yeah, so I actually did. I did a sweep of all the tweets across just Twitter alone. It's over 150,000 views collectively. So the people care, and people are seeing this and they're sharing it. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I haven't gotten any negative feedback from anybody. The only people that seem to be coming at this in a negative light are those in power that can do something about this. But the people love it and love the fact that I'm doing this work, and that tells a lot to me, John.
Yeah, and I think the more I hear what you're saying, the more of an indictment I think it is of the local media. This sounds to me like if there is such a thing as a front page story anymore, as I said, I don't watch local TV news, but I follow them on Twitter, and if they were doing something with this, I'd know about it. And they're obviously not. It's good to hear that Andy Sheehan's going to get back to you, but this seems to me to be as much of an indictment of the media as it is of the people running the city. And And what is a guy like you who just started this eye on PGH 20 minutes ago, and you are doing the story, but KDKA, WTAE, and WPXI blow it off?
Yeah, it appears like that's the case. I've reached out. I've given every opportunity for local news to cover this. I really hope Andy ends up getting back to me. I'm willing to give a full statement, full interview to any local news that wants to cover this. But this is what's happening. This is what matters in the city. Not everything is PR. Not everything is rainbows and sunshine and a new fair that's going on downstairs. You need to cover what's happening in the city that matters to people. There are people sleeping in the cold under a bridge that's catching on fire next to used needles, rusty stolen bikes, in tents with a pile of garbage next to them, and nobody wants to cover it. So you know what? I will.
Yeah, well, the local TV stations, they wouldn't want to spend too much time on this because they might only be able to do 7 weather segments during the hour instead of 8. And I can get the weather in Istanbul on my phone in 30 seconds, and they'll spend 8 minutes of the newscast doing weather and not find it. This number one, you've worked in the media. You worked at Project Veritas for 4 years, so you know how the media work. Just the fact that there, and I've talked about this on the show with other guests, media experts I've had on. Somebody like Andy Sheehan, and I know Andy, and he's an old school investigative reporter. He knows a good story when he sees one. And so and I don't know, maybe the people in local media don't know a good story when they see one anymore, or maybe they're afraid to do them. I don't know. I just can't believe that what you're finding is not found to be interest by the major media in Pittsburgh.
Well, I hate to say it, John, but what it seems like, and you're right, I spent a lot of time in media at Project Veritas, and we dealt a lot with, national media. I traveled the country doing these investigative reports and working undercover and what have you. So we dealt a lot with national media coverage, and I saw firsthand how, the legacy media, the mainstream media, they clearly work hand in hand with those in power. And I never wanted to think that local media does the same, but it's hard to not believe that whenever you see the things that they cover and how much bidding they do for the elected officials. Your job as a reporter is to hold those in power accountable, not to do PR for them. Your job is to hold them accountable and put things like what I documented out and show them what's wrong with the city. You are to hold the people, or to hold the elected officials accountable and work for the people. You're not to do the bidding for them and do their public relations. It's sad. It really is.
Are you a lifelong Pittsburgher?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're only 27 years old. I say only because I'm old, but for someone of your age in your mid-20s, and you've already been doing this for 4 or 5 years. It's pretty impressive. And I just before I go, I got about 2 minutes left here. You actually interviewed actual homeless people. What did you find from them?
I did, yes. So the first video I did, I interviewed a 20-year-old girl. She's not even old enough to drink yet, and she's living in a tent off of Grand Street, and right in downtown, right next to all the big buildings and everything. And, these people have sad stories. It broke my heart interviewing this girl to hear about how she was abused as a kid after she was adopted by not so great, adopted parents, and how she got into drugs to numb her pain, and, how she went from homeless shelter to homeless shelter. And again, this all happened to this girl before the age of 20. She's only 20 years old now, and she was very articulate, very well-spoken. Let me know that she graduated with a 3.9 GPA is what she said, and I believe her. She was a very well-spoken, sweet girl, and it's just sad to see that she has access, and this is what really gets me. She has access as an addict to get free heroin needles and get free alcohol pads and free tourniquets from resources around the city, but she doesn't have the resources to get a shower, to get a decent meal, to get her resume, to someone to help her with a resume, to help her get a job. She's not getting that sort of help, John. So it's really, really disappointing to see cities like ours doing things like funding resources for people to continue getting high, yet ignoring resource funding for things like getting a job, getting a shower, stuff like that. And they'll tell you all day that they're doing it because they have limited space and whatnot. Well, maybe that's an issue you need to work on
Make
at
space.
this point. Yes, make space. Make space. I don't think the solution is to enable people to keep getting high. I just don't.
Wow. Hey, I'm out of time, Bobby, but I'll be watching your stuff. Bobby Harr, real quick, one more time, where they can find your video.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. You can find my videos at Eyes on PGH across all social media: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. That's Eyes on PGH, and I have a lot more to come.
Well, I hope you keep me posted, and we'll have you on again. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, John.
Okay, that's Bobby Harr. We'll be right back.